This is about the survival of the human race, a sign of the times, an analysis, and a commentary. Pakistan suffers winter of attacks as militants seek piece of the pie. The onset of winter traditionally marks the end of the militants' fighting season and heralds a lull in attacks. But this year is different. Pakistan is facing an extraordinary surge in terrorist activity. The country is reeling from an intense spate of organized militancy that has crossed international borders and morphed from an anti-Western jihad in Afghanistan to an anti-state and sectarian movement deep inside Pakistan. The increasingly sophisticated and high-profile attacks have killed many scores. They include at least 114 people who were slain in a series of attacks on January 10th, a day which was later dubbed Black Thursday. This uptick in violence in Pakistan comes as Islamabad is trying to improve its relationship with Kabul and Washington. It is seen as a message from insurgents. They are not going anywhere. With the end in sight and the ground for final talks being laid across the border in Afghanistan, and by default in our Badlands too, everyone wants a peace, said the political editor at the Express Tribune newspaper and a fellow at the Reuters Institute at Oxford University. And those who are bound by circumstance are now at each other's throats for a piece of the pie. One human rights group has warned that sectarian violence targeting Pakistan's Shiite Muslims was rising. Last year was the bloodiest year for Shias in living memory. More than 400 were killed, and if the January 10th attack is any indication, it's just going to get worse. The roughly 500,000 strong Shia Hazara community in Quetta are routinely hunted by extremist groups because their ethnically distinct features make them an easy target. They live in a state of siege. Stepping out of the ghetto means risking death. The impact of the Black Thursday attacks was felt nationally, with relatives of the victims refusing to bury their dead for 4 days and staging a downtown sit-in, forcing an executive decision by the Prime Minister and President to sack the province's elected government for ineptness. By mid-December, Pakistan's gradient of terror had become remarkably steep and continues to rise. Women and children are now fair game. On December 15th, a sophisticated, multi-stage suicide bomber and sniper attack on Peshawar Airport and an Air Force base triggered concerns about the ability of the country's nuclear-armed military to protect itself. 2 days later, the Taliban would claim responsibility for the deadliest car bombing of 2012. Women and children were among 21 killed in Jamrud. On December 18th and 19th, drive-by shootings targeting health workers who were part of a national immunization drive to treat children with much-needed polio vaccines would claim the lives of 8 people, most of them young women. The following weekend, one of the Taliban's most vocal critics would be silenced. A veteran politician and senior government minister was among 9 victims of a suicide bombing in Peshawar. The Taliban would claim responsibility, pledging to continue targeting secular politicians. And just before New Year's Eve, 22 of the 23 paramilitary soldiers kidnapped during a daring militant attack on their posts near Khyber turned up dead. they were executed without any ransom demand being received. Militants would continue to target women, killing 7 health workers on New Year's Day. 7 more Army soldiers who were abducted while returning from vacation to join their unit would be killed on January 2nd. As Afghanistan's endgame evolves, the matrix of hostilities changes in Pakistan as well, where women and children are now considered fair game by insurgents. The plot thickens and the terrible surprises continue. There are a large number of players and an increasing number of attacks in a lot of different areas, with a lot of different agendas, with no real common element. It would be safe to say there are a lot of different quarters that need to be satisfied, and fast. If they can't be appeased, then the armed forces will need to lock and load. In other words, the violence in Pakistan is spiraling out of control, and the question should be, is what will happen with Pakistan's nuclear weapons if or when they fall into the militants' hands. This too is another sign of the end of times as we know them, transition days, which is a time of extraordinary happenings, changes, and events, because it's about what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations. And again, that should be a very important question to ask. Revelation chapter 11, verse 18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou should give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and should destroy them which destroy the earth. 19. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings, and voices, and thunderings, and an earthquake, and great hail. Yes, it's time for the spiritual and physical manifestation of the book of Revelation. Everything is connected, and everything is numbered, and all these are more signs of the times.